Hello and welcome back to the channel. For today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with you how I made this waist snatch 3-part corset with Basque Waistline. So if it's your first time viewing my channel, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, leave your comment at the comment section, and also share. So if you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always supporting and watching my videos. So let's start. The first thing I did was to mark my shoulder to bust, shoulder to under bust, shoulder to waistline, and my shoulder to top length. So for the top length, I went ahead to place my tape and I marked 5 inches, and I have half inches left in case I have shortage. So this 5 inches is not a constant. You can use 4 inches, so I'm just using 5 for this tutorial. Next, I'm going to mark my neckline, which is the standard 3 by 3 inches. Then I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to mark my shoulder divided by 2, which leaves me at 7 inches. So I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to make a point at that 7 inches so that it will be very visible to you. So from that point, I'm going to go down and mark 1 inch down. So this 1 inch, from there I'll be marking my shoulder slant. So I've marked my shoulder slant. The next thing I'm going to do is to get my chest line and draw my armhole. So to do that, to get your chest line is your bust divided by 6 plus 1.5 inches, which leaves me at 7 inches. So I'm going to make a point at that 7 inches. So at that 7 inches, I'm going to extend the line this way. But before doing that, I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to make sure whatever I have at my shoulder, I'm going to mark it at my chest line. So the reason why I'm doing this is to make sure the line is straight. From my shoulder, I'll extend it to my chest line and extend it also outwardly. So this is what I have after drawing out my line. So the next thing I'll do now is to draw my armhole curve. To do that, I'm going to place my tape this way and I'm going to find the middle. So I'm going to find the middle, which is 3.5, and I'm going to go in by ½ inch. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place my French curve, touching that ½ inch I went in. So from there, I'll connect it from my shoulder down to the ½ inch, and from the ½ inch I'm going to connect it down to my chest line. So the next thing I'm going to do is to mark my bust band, which is my nipple to nipple divided by 2. So I'm going to place my tape and I'm going to mark 3.5 at my bust line. Then I'll go down to my under bust and I'm also going to mark it. So before I do that, I'm just going to correct the labelings I have there. So I'm going to write this at bust line and at the other part at chest line. Then going down to my under bust, I'll go ahead and I will mark my bust pan there. Going down to the waistline, I'm going to mark it at that point, and I'm also going to extend it down to my top length. So the next thing I'll do is to draw a line to connect all the marks. So I've gone ahead and I've drawn out my line. So the next thing I'm going to do is to place my tape at my bust line and I'm going to go up by 2 inches. So you can as well mark your chest line and go up by 2 inches from your chest line. So it depends on what you're working with or how much you want to refill your cleavage. So why I mark 2 inches from my bust is that I want my neckline to be a bit lower than what we have at the thumbnail. I'll also outline my chest line. So going over to my pattern at my under bust, I'm going to mark 1 inch at both sides for my dart intake. I'll also do so at my waistline and also at my top length. So going to the upper part of my pattern, I'm going to go ahead and mark 1 inch at both sides for my bust tightening at that area. Next is to connect all those lines forming a straight line. So I've gone ahead and I've connected the lines, the dart intake I marked at the under bust, at the waist and at the top length. So the next thing I'm going to do is to connect from my under bust to my bust line. So I'm just going to place my French curve this way and I'm going to connect from the bust line down to the under bust this way. I'm also going to connect the other side of the cup. So I'm going to place the French curve, and I will connect from the under bust, from the bust line down to the under bust. So at the center or at the middle part of my corset, I'm going to place my tape at my chest line, and I'm going to come down by ½ inch. After coming down by ½ inch, I'm going to go in by ½ inch also. So I'm just going to draw a little line at that point this way. Next, I'm going to place my French curve, and I'm going to draw my cup. So I'm going to connect the line from my under bust to the ½ inch I came down at my chest line. Next thing I'll do is to go ahead and I will outline my mark with my marker so that it will be very visible to see. So from that 1 inch mark I made for my bust tightening, I'm going to place my French curve this way, and I'm going to connect from that point down to my bust point. So with that, my cup for this side is almost ready. So I'll go ahead and place my French curve, and I'm going to connect the 2 points together. After connecting it, I'm just going to take my marker and I'll outline that ½ inch I came in with. So moving over to the other part of the cup, before I do that, what I'm going to do is to place my tape, and I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. So I'll go ahead and measure what I have from there to my armhole, and I will divide it by 2. So whatever I have, I'm going to mark at this point from my armhole side, and I'm going to make a mark. So for my armhole point, I'm going to go down by ½ inch. And from that ½ inch, I'm going to extend my new chest line outwards. So I've gone ahead and I have done that. So the next thing I'll do right now is to draw my cup. So I'm going to connect from that point to my under bust, and I'm going to place my French curve to achieve that. So I'm going to draw the line from my new chest line down to my under bust. So after drawing out that line, the next thing I'll do is to connect this point down to my chest line. The bust tightening I marked earlier, I'm going to connect it from that point down to my bust point. So this is what I have after I'm done. So from this point, I'm going to extend it down to my new chest line, and I'm going to place my French curve this way, and I'm going to draw the line. So with this, our corset is almost ready. The next thing we're going to do is just to share our cup into 3-part corsets. And to do that, I'm going to place my tape this way, and I'm going to mark 2 inches from that point. After marking 2 inches at this point, I'm going to place my tape at the center, and I will go ahead and I will mark 2½ inches at the center point, and I'll also place it at the other side of the center and mark 2½ inches. Going down to the other side of the cup, I'm going to mark 2 inches. So after marking this, I'll go ahead and I will connect my lines. So I'll connect the 2.5 inches from the center down to the 2 inches at the other side, and I will also do that for the other side also. So I'll go ahead and I'll make use of my marker so that the line will be very visible for you to see. So I'll connect all the lines from the side to the middle. So with this, I'm done drafting the cup, which leaves me at the 3-part corset. So the next thing we're going to do right now is to insert the body circumference. So at that point, we'll be taking care of the next part, which is the waist snatch corset. So what I'm going to do right now is to place my tape at my bust point, and I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4, and I'm going to mark. After marking that, I'm going to place my tape at this point, and I'm going to measure the dart intake, and I will replace it back at my bust line. After doing that, I'll go ahead and I will mark my 1 inch sewing allowance. After doing that, I'll be going down to my under bust, At my under bust, I'm going to insert my under bust circumference divided by 4, which leaves me at 7 inches. After marking that, I'm going to measure the dart intake at both sides, and I will mark the 2 inches dart intake that I took. Afterwards, I'll go ahead and add 1 inch for sewing allowance. So going down to my waistline, so this is where the waist snatching is going to take place. So what you want to do right now is to calculate whatever you want to take out from your waist. So I'm going to write my original waistline, which is 28 inches. So I want to snatch 6 inches from my waist. So this 6 inches is not compulsory. You can go down by 4 inches or 2 inches. So 28 minus 6, I have 22 inches. So there are two methods of doing this. So what you're going to do is this 22 inches, which is your new waistline, you're going to divide it by 4, and you're going to have 5.5 inches. So you're going to mark this at your waistline. Or the second method, you're going to divide your original waistline, which is 28 inches. You're going to divide it by 4 inches, and you're going to have 7. And then your new waistline, which is this 28 minus 6, giving you 22 inches, you're going to divide it by 4, and you have 5.5. Now you're going to minus 5.5 from 7 inches, and you're going to have 1.5. Then you're going to create a new dart intake at this part of your corset. So the one we are going to make use of is the first method. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to mark 5.5 inches at my waistline. So remember how we got this is your new waistline that you minus 6 inches from, divided by 4, which is 22 divided by 4, which is 5.5. And I'll go ahead and I'll measure my dart intake, and I'm going to mark. Then I'll add my 1 inch sewing allowance. So going down to my top length, I'm going to mark my hip circumference divided by 4, and I will mark the 2 inches dart intake. After marking that, I'll go ahead, I will mark the 1 inch sewing allowance. So the next thing I'm going to do is to connect from my chest line to my bust line to the under bust to the waistline down to the top length. So at this point, if you find this video very interesting and educative, please hit on the subscribe button. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share, and leave your comment at the comment section, and also turn on your notification button to get new updates from my channel whenever I post. Back to my pattern, I'm going to take my tape and I will measure about 3.5 inches. I remember I added ½ inch at the lower part of my pattern in case I have a shortage. So from there, I'm going to connect it down to the center or at the other end of my pattern. So after doing that, I'll go ahead and take my marker and I'm going to outline the mark or the curve from my waistline down to the center of my pattern. So for now, I'm not going to cut out my pattern this way. So I'm just going to trace out the body of my pattern first before cutting out this line at this point. So this is my pattern. I'm done tracing out the dart intake and the upper part. So I did this for a reason. First, you're going to place your pattern together and you're going to make sure the lines are meeting. So you're going to notice that the lines are not meeting at this point. So what you're going to do is to take your marker and you're going to blend it down to the waistline, and you're going to go ahead and you're going to cut. So after cutting, you're going to label your corset pattern. So to avoid mistaking one part for the other part. So the next thing I'm going to do right now is to take another pattern paper and I'm going to place the upper part of my corset cup and I'm going to pin it down together or tape it down together to form one part of a cup. So after taping it together, I'll go ahead and I'm going to cut it. So after I'm done cutting, this is what I have. So this is the upper part of my cup, and I'm just going to take out this part. So after removing that part, I'll go ahead and I'll take my marker and I'll make a small arrow indicating where to join my cup to the other part also. So this is what I have after I'm done drafting and I'm done cutting the front pattern. So with this, we're going to move over to the back pattern. For my back pattern, I'll place my front pattern this way and I'm going to trace what I have first. I'm going to cut out the unwanted part on my pattern paper. So while recording, I lost some part of the video for the back part, so I'm just going to do an explanation of what I did. So for my back pattern, I'm just going to measure from the top to where my curve started. So from there I have about 10 inches and I'm going to mark it straight down. So afterwards I'm going to trace the sides of my pattern and I'm going to cut it out. So this is what I have after I'm done tracing for the back pattern. So I didn't do much for my back pattern. I wanted it to be very easy and simple. Going over to my pattern, I added half on this part and I didn't add half here because I added my sewing allowance, and I added half to the upper and lower part of the pattern. So for my lining part, I ironed gum stay to it. Going over to the second pattern, I went ahead to cut it on fold, so I added ½ inch in front and ½ inch below it, and also at the lining I ironed gum stay to it. Then down to my back pattern, I went ahead to add ½ inch at the zipper side and beside it round, and I didn't add half by the side. So going over to the cup part, I cut out my fabric, lining, gum stay and bra foam that I'm going to make use of. So next I'm going to be joining my pattern. This is the front and I will be joining it with ½ inch. So I've joined my material, and whatever I did to the main fabric, I also did that to the lining piece also. After doing that, the next thing is to create boning channels on my main fabric. So I'm going to be doing this with a bias, and I'm going to sew ½ inch first, then I'm going to flip the bias to the other side and I'm going to top stitch. I'm going to do that also at the middle. I'll create a boning channel at the middle and also at the other parts where I joined at the middle. So moving over to the back pattern also, I'm also going to take my bias and I'm going to create a boning channel at the back of the dress. So here it is. I've gone ahead and I've created the boning channel at the front part and also at the back part of the corset dress. So moving along is the cup part. So you're going to place your cup correctly to avoid mistakes. So watch me while I arrange mine so that you won't get confused when you're doing yours too. So after arranging it, I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to join it. So whatever I do to my material, I'm going to do to the lining. I'm also going to do to the bra foam. So it's also optional for you to use a bra foam. You can go ahead and use a wadding, or you can also make use of an already made cup. So this is a tutorial. So to join my cup, I'm going to join the lower part together first, and then I'm going to join the upper part to it. So I'm done joining the lining part. So I went ahead to notch it also, and I also notched the material. So you can also iron stay to your fabric. So I joined my cup So what I'm going to do right now is to trim off the excess I have at the bra form. Next, I'm going to take bias and I'm going to be creating a design on my cup this way. I'm going to sew it just the same way I created a boning channel on my fabric. So after sewing at that part, I'm going to place it the other way around, and I'm going to also sew, creating a design on my cup. So I'm done creating the design, and this is what I have on my cup. Next thing I'm going to do is to place my fabric on my bra foam, and I'm going to pin it round it. So any excess that I have, I'm going to be trimming it off. So while pinning it, you're going to drag your fabric on the bra foam to make sure it's tight, and you're just going to pin it very well. So after pinning, this is what your cup is going to look like. So what you're going to do is to take your scissors and you're going to cut out the excess that you have on the bra foam. So whatever I do to this, I'm also going to do it to the other cup also. So I'll go ahead and go over to the machine and I'm going to sew round the cup. So after sewing my cup, this is what I have. So at the upper part, I went ahead to trim out half to remove bulginess when I'm turning up or when I sew at the upper part of the cup. Next step is to join my cup to the body of the corset. So I'm going to make sure the parts I have bias at my cup and the parts I have bias on the body of the corset is aligning together, and I'm just going to pin it down. So after doing that, you can go ahead and place your cup and pin it down, or you can sew it straight if it's easier for you to do so. So when you place your cup and you notice that the space you have is a bit smaller than your cup, you're going to notch it. After notching it, you're just going to place it and check if the space aligns. So at this other part also, you're going to also pin it and you're going to sew. So I'm going to go over to the machine and I'm going to join. But if you find it difficult joining, it is advisable to pin before you join. So I'm done joining the bra cup to the corset, and this is what I have. As you can see, is looking very fine and neat. So whatever I did to my main fabric, I also did to my lining. So the next thing I will be doing is to pass my boning to my corset. So I've already cut out my boning and I wrapped the edge with a paper sellotape. So the reason why I did this is to avoid it poking the person while wearing it. So I'll go ahead and I'll pass my boning to my boning channel. So I'm making use of a plastic boning for this. So while passing your plastic boning, make sure it doesn't get to the end of the fabric, because you're going to be sewing with 1/2 inch at the end. And if you have a reddening boning, you can go ahead and make use of your reddening boning. So for the back pattern also, I'm going to insert the plastic boning. After inserting my boning, the next thing I'm going to do is to turn up with my lining. I'm going to stitch it round. So coming to this part, I'm going to leave it open because I'll be turning it over from that part. So going over to the back pattern, I'm going to place my tape and I will mark 1/2 inch. So the reason why I'm marking this 1/2 inch is that I'm going to actually sew a reddening boning at that point. From that 1/2 inches, I'm going to sew a reddening boning. The reason why I'm doing this is to give strength to the lacing bar, so that by the time I'm done sewing and I lace my corset at the back, it's going to be very firm and strong. So let me flip it to the back, because that is where I'll be sewing the reddening boning or sewable boning on. So after marking the 1/2 inch from the beginning of the dress to the lower part, I'm going to take my sewable boning and I'm going to sew on it this way, because I'll be turning my dress with the 1/2 inch in front. So I'll go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew on it. You can also sew it on your lining. So I've gone ahead and I've sewed the Reginin boning or the sewable boning, and I didn't let it get to the end because I'll be sewing with half round and I'll be flipping it to the other side. So I also did that to the other part of the material. So next I'm going to place my lining and I'm going to stitch it round. So I'm also going to leave about few inches that I will be turning it over with. Going over to my front pattern, I'm going to pin round it and I'm going to sew around it. So by the side I'll leave a little space to turn it over to the other side. I'm done sewing, so I'm going to notch my dress round. After notching it, I'm going to flip it to the other side from that space I left by the side. So after turning over, this is what I have for my corsets. So I'm going to go over to the sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch by this side. So I've also turned the back pattern over and I'm also going to top stitch it at the side where I flipped it open. So after top stitching my pattern, I went ahead to place my back pattern on it and I pinned it down. So what I'm going to do right now is that I'm going to sew with 1/2 inch at the sides. So remember my sewing allowance was 1 inch and I used 1/2 to turn my lining and fabric, so I'm left with 1/2 inch. So I'm going to mark that 1/2 inch at both sides of my dress. At the bust part, I'll go in by 1 inch so that it will be firm at the bust area. So after doing that, I'll go ahead and insert my eyelets and I'm going to show you the final look of the dress. So after sewing, I'm going to insert my eyelet at this part. So I'm going to cut out strip of fabric and I'm going to sew it for the lacing bar. So after sewing this is my final look. So with this, we have come to the end of the tutorial. So please like, share and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification button to get new updates from my channel whenever I upload a new video on my channel. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for always watching my video.